what you're looking at are the parts for the emergency brake cross shaft that goes between the frame, the rails on the frame. This is a brass cup, a felt washer, spring, and then the cap that it all goes in that gets bolted to the frame. And so this was taken out, sandblasted, painted, all put together looking nice. This was really frozen up at one point. You could barely even move it. These are the holes that are in the frame where it gets bolted, one on each side. And this is after it has been installed, and now it's working really good, moving back and forth with no problem whatsoever. So emergency brake cross shaft, all done.
It is time to reinstall the service brake actuator, crossbar, whatever you want to call it. It goes between the two rails in the Model A. And I wanted to tell you what I did to this thing. It was kind of interesting. It should be better. First of all, the brackets, it's held up underneath the frame itself. It doesn't go through the cross member. It's bolted on using these kind of brackets to go up and hold it in place, right? And the old one, it looked like it had never been touched in 90 plus years. I kid you not. It was rusted. These brass bushings here were, one of them was almost worn all the way through, which was interesting. There was a lot of play. There was a lot of slop in this thing up inside there. So I took it down. I had to take it to a machine shop because I don't have the right tools to get these pins out to be able to drill them out. I don't have a drill press. So they drilled them out. They said they had a really tough time getting the ends off. It was all rusted up. And we took the existing bushings off. And I believe it was Snyder's that I got a kit that basically replaces this when this bar is worn down. And you can see this kit right here, the pieces that make it up or make up the kit. And so it comes with a little bit of Loctite glue, metal to metal type of Loctite glue. I slid that the collar on, glued it down, and then put this brass on, and then took it back to the machine shop where they took the pins, new pins, brand new pins, and pressed them back in there. So this is rotating perfectly. The other side is rotating perfectly. This should be good for another 100 years. Maybe. I certainly won't be around to see if it's good, but I think it's back to where it was when it was originally made in 1930. So like I said, then there's also brand spanking new brackets that get bolted up underneath the frame like that, and that's what this whole thing sits on. So I think I'll probably put a little grease in there. I put a little grease on the collar before putting on the brass bushing, and we'll see how it goes. So the kit came with screws and nuts and cotter pins. So let's get that put onto the car right now. Installation of the emergency brake cross member and the service brake cross member is complete. And these things rotate back and forth really nice now. No friction at all. It's looking really good. The only problem I had were these brackets here. These are the new brackets, and they are thicker than the original brackets. So I had to take these castle nuts and grind them down a little bit in order to get the holes showing for the cotter pins. But other than that, no big deal. It's all ready to go. Looks good. And we have another project completed. After stripping out the whole front end of the car here, I started doing some research on the leaf spring itself, and a lot of good information online from people on the different forums and whatnot. I also found a document from asprings.com. They're telling me of what the spring width and height should be. So I started measuring out, and boy, this spring is 90 plus years old, been bouncing around out here in Colorado and these rough roads all these years. And this is not good. That's for sure. it ended up being, as you can see here, about an inch longer than the new one that I got that I'll get into in a second. So that kind of told me that this thing was bad. I want it to be able to ride properly and have the proper spring. So I got a new spring. This one's the old one. It had a 12 leaf spring in the car. And so that one's gone. And we have our brand new one. This one came from Eaton Detroit Spring, and it was about $400 with shipping in there. And I think they did a great job on it. I measured it, and it is within the specs that's calling here. What it's not within specs of is the height. They're saying 4 7/8 to 5 1/8 height, and I am getting 5.5. So we're about 3/8 of an inch higher than what at least A Springs. I don't know if A Springs is accurate or not. I couldn't find anything else on specs on the leaf springs, but at least, the width wise is within specs, and it's not nearly as long. The arch is not as long as the old one. So that's a good thing. So what I'm going to do is get this onto the car. I've been debating on whether to put the axle on with the perches here and then put that whole thing on the car, or just put this on the car and then build it up from there. So I'll make that decision here in a second, and we'll keep working away. I was thinking about putting the leaf springs onto the axle over on the table before putting it on here, simply because of safety reasons. I'm up on 2 jacks here. There's 2 4x4s that are also stacked up here. And I was just a little worried about this thing falling over with me jerking it around. But I think I'm going to take it nice and slow. I'm going to put on a piece at a time, and then we'll progress with getting the other components onto the axle. So I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to talk about it, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, so the leaf spring's in, and on the ground here is the axle, radius rod, and we're going to get that next. Spreading apart this new leaf spring, I've never done it before, so I don't know how much of a challenge it's going to be. But I know that people that have done this before had to get a leaf spring spreader. And I think they were like $70 at Bratton's or Snyder's. I saw them, I'm pretty sure I saw them for around $70. And then I went on to the Vintage Ford forum, and there was a gentleman there that had talked about making his own. And here's the parts, and you could do it for less than $15, and that's exactly what I did here. So this was a 1/2 inch by 24 inch pipe at Home Depot, just sitting on the shelf like this. And then he said get 3/8 all stock, which was, I think this was 36 inches. I cut it down, and then you have to have a washer and a nut. So the whole concept here is to spread this thing apart. So what I did was, on this end, I ground down half of it, and then I took my sledgehammer, put it on the flat part of the vise over here on the workbench, and smashed it, and then kind of curved it to the underside of the leaf spring in the same way with this side. As you can see, I've got it ground down to a point, and that side's ground down so that it goes up underneath this edge right here and right here, if you can see that. And then just take a wrench and do it. So I did this. I tried it on the old spring before I tossed it, and sure enough, this stayed in place pretty well, and it seems to work. So for $15 or less, I don't even think it was 15. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there we go. Homemade leaf spring spreader, and looks like it's going to work. So I've got it the right side up on each side, and let's get these shackles, one connected to the spring and one to the perch, and hopefully I don't get hurt. All right, let's give it a try. Well, that was relatively easy. It really was. I was expecting to fight this spring with these new shackles and the perches, and boy, it went on there pretty easy. Thank God for my homemade spring spreader. So my hats off to whoever was on the forum when we were talking about leaf springs to come up with this idea. No, this worked fine. I used a piece of rope on the back over the radius ball to adjust it, because the perches are kind of a little bit at an angle. The radius rod's at an angle, and I needed to adjust it up and down in order to get it just perfectly lined up with the axle. So that's the reason for the rope. Mickey Mouse as it may be, but it worked. Okay, so let's get this out of here, and we'll get rid of that, and let's see what happens here. Everything is nice and loose. I put the castle nuts on, tightened them down, then backed off about a half of a turn so that it wasn't frozen up, and both of these are pivoting just fine and dandy on both sides. So we've got castle nuts and cotter pins for the square. If you notice, this is, even though this is a 1930, they change from square brackets holding on the leaf spring to round in, I think it was April of 1930. So this car was built in Denver in the February-March time frame, and then they went to the rounded one. So we got the square ones on here because it's an early 30. So there you go. There's our leaf spring and axle. Radius rod is all complete. Now it's a matter of the spindles and brake system and getting closer to starting the engine. All right.
Next up is attaching the spindles, brake backing plates, and cast iron brake drums. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'll have more videos coming as this 1930 Ford Model A 4-door town sedan is being restored. Thanks for watching.